I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, June the 22nd, brought to you in part by Vitalix. Get the blue tub, and remember, Vitalix has multiple options for controlling and repelling the fly population in your herd. For more information, go to Vitalix.com. North versus the South. Northern cattle feeders are continuing to get more frustrated with the southern cattle feeders, as the northern cattle feeders are negotiating mid to upper 140s for their fed cattle, which are in dwindling supplies, and their show list is extremely green. Hard to find any of those top grading cattle there, while the southern cattle feeders are struggling to maintain the 140 that they established late last week. So it's making it tough for the northern feeders. Of course, the southern feeders are completely dominated by your corporate big feed outfits there, and they are not negotiating at all, of course, and it's just a few of your smaller southern mostly custom cattle feeders that are negotiating down there, and they don't have any leverage and they can't keep the market up. And then on Tuesday we saw it get even worse, as some cattle feeder in the southern plains tendered delivery. Of course, we're late in the spot month for June live cattle futures. They tendered 25 loads of heifers for delivery in Tulia, Texas. With your June live cattle spot month trading at 137.82, sub 138, and we saw some trade in the Texas Panhandle, just a light amount of trade at 138.5. Why would you tender for delivery at 137.82 when you could sell them direct live in the country for 138.5 or better, and it's only Tuesday? Well, there's three reasons that you may decide to do that. Either you've got junk cattle that you can't get a bid on, and I really doubt that's the reason, because a lot of the cattle down there are not that great. But if the cattle are finished, even plainer kind of cattle, they kill better than what you normally think they will. And if they're junk cattle, a lot of times they're lighter muscled. They'll have a higher quality grade than what you think, because they're light muscled. So that's one of the reasons, which I doubt is why that's happening. The second reason that they may be doing that is because they know that nobody wants to take delivery of those cattle. Because if it was a packer that was going to take delivery of the cattle, they would have had them for slaughter delivery, and they would have took them at the plant. But your packing facilities, for the most part, don't have long positions, because they don't long hedge, because everybody is falling all over themselves to let them have the cattle either on a formula deal, a forward contract, or something like that. So they have their needs, a big percentage of them filled, especially in the southern plains, so they don't have to long hedge, to offset the risk of buying cattle at a higher price down the line. But they may be looking for the penalty for those that don't want to take delivery of those cattle. So if you're one of the longest longs in the June spot month, you may be the one that gets delivered upon. The longest long will be the first one to get delivered upon. Likely it's a trader or a speculator or somebody like that. Well, why in the hell would you want to take delivery of finished fed cattle on a live basis in a stockyard when it's 100 degrees? You know those cattle are going to melt, and it's going to be hard to get those cattle back on feed and get them to get going again, to sell them in a few weeks, whenever we think that the market could be even higher. So likely they would pay the penalty not to have to take delivery of those cattle. I mean, it's just like taking a busload of big fat tourists weighing 500 and 600 pounds, getting them off their couch. They've been couch potatoes for the last 3 or 4 months, loading them into a bus in 100-degree heat, taking them out, chousing them around, and thinking that you're going to get them back on feed, which they may eat again, but they're not going to be gaining like they were whenever they were sitting on the couch. But that's pretty much how that goes. So that's a viable reason that they may be tendering for delivery, to get a buck or two, 100 there of a penalty payment from those that don't want to take the delivery of those cattle. But likely the third reason that they may be tendering those cattle for delivery is to stunt the board. And I've told you guys before, that is a way to get the board back in line with what cash is. But it usually happens when the board is trading at a premium to the cash price, because when people tender for delivery, then your longest longs will get out. It'll suck the board back down, and it will help those cattle feeders that are just feeding for the basis. And I've told you guys many times, especially your big corporate feeders, but your Southern Plains feeders and a lot of the Northern Plains feeders, a lot of your big outfits, they are only feeding for the basis, which is the difference between cash and futures. They're buying cattle as cheap as they can buy them. They feed them as cheap as they can feed them, and they hedge them all the way to their eyeballs, where that way that it'll line up with what the board is. And a lot of times there is a basis, which there's a big basis right now, not for your Southern Plains guys, but for the Northern Plains guys, there's a huge basis. If you're selling cattle for 148 and the board's 138, well, you get to sell the cattle, you may make a few bucks on them, and you get to put 10 bucks in your pocket on your hedge. But the Southern Plains feeders are right there at par. They're not getting a whole lot, but they're looking down the line at August, and they're likely wanting to stunt that board so that they can keep that basis. Well, that works good for them. It doesn't work good for the industry, and it is not good for the industry because it runs the longs off, which your longs are mostly just traders and speculators and people like that. But why would they want to stay with the market? That's why I always say on your live cattle futures, it's like a mirage. You have this big quote out there that everybody's aiming for, and the closer you get to it, the more it runs out. And it's just like a mirage out in the desert, and you're looking for that big nice puddle of water you can sink into and get a drink, but by the time you get there, it's gone. But I'm thinking that's probably why they tendered 25 loads for delivery in Tulia to stunt the board, scare off your longs that are in the spot month, and make your August longs look up and think, gosh, I don't know if I want to get in there, stay in there or not, because the closer we get, my chances once we get there, I might get delivered upon. What am I going to do with these big fat cattle in the heat of the summer when I can't get them to go back on feed, and they're not going to be attractive fed cattle for the packers to come in there buy if I put them into another lot. But you look back over the years and look back for the more than the last full year, back to February the 21st, and those feedlots that tendered fat cattle for delivery have been 95% in the Southern Plains. Don't need to do that in the Northern Plains because we can negotiate for a fed cattle price, and we get an attractive price there, especially when we've got the goods to sell them. That is more reason why we've got to have this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, guys. It would fix a lot of that. It would bring some of these plant facilities up that don't buy any negotiated cattle, bring them up to the minimum, and then your others are at the minimum. They would have to compete against each other to buy cattle that are in loose hands in a negotiated manner, and it would pump up your fat cattle price. And if you guys don't see that, I don't know how I can explain it to you any better. But today, here on Wednesday, it's all coming to a head right now, guys. We've already seen your House approve the Special Investigators Bill, which is a sister bill to the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. They have not marked up and voted on the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, but they have already approved in Congress, in the House, your Special Investigators Bill, and so that's approved. But here today, on Wednesday, they are going to mark up both the Special Investigators Bill and the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act in the Senate Ag Committee. So they will vote on that in the Senate Ag Committee. We feel certain that we have the votes to get that. We have 20 co-sponsors there, 10 from the Republicans, 10 from the Democrats. It's a bipartisan bill there. Should go through. But through this markup act here, as we go into the House or the Senate Ag Committee, they can try to put amendments on there. That we're expecting there's going to be at least 3 amendments that they will try to attach to that bill. One of those amendments is to strike out the mandated trade, which is the heart and soul of that bill. And you wouldn't be surprised that amendment is going to be proposed by the Kansas Senator Roger Marshall there, So we hope that those amendments don't get stuck on it. We hope that it gets marked up and approved by your Senate Ag Committee, and then we'll go to vote in the Senate. And we think that we've got the votes to get to both those bills approved there. And then we'll just have to wait on the House to see if they will mark up Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act and get it approved in the House. But if you haven't called your senators, if you haven't called your House of Representative members and told them that we need to approve Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, now is the time to do it. I plead with you guys to get that done. Talk about your board on Tuesday. June live cattle futures were down 20 cents with pressure mounting in there, and then you had those 25 tenders for delivery on there, and you think, well, why didn't they do more than that if they really wanted to stunt the board? Well, they're right down there in that Tulia area. That's the max that you can deliver at Tulia in one day, so 25 was all they could do. So, but your June live cattle futures settled at 137.82. Not a handsome price to get paid for when you're delivering fat cattle. It costs about $1.50 a hundred to deliver cattle, so that puts you way behind the 8 ball. How about August live cattle futures down 32 cents at 136.25? Your back months on live cattle down 32 to up 40. Feeder cattle contracts, August was up big, up 235 because your grains were down really hard on a weather market. But August feeder cattle ending the session at 175.30. September was up 247 at 177.27. That sounds pretty good to you guys that have yearlings turned out on grass. Back months on feeder cattle up 210 to up 260. Look at your grains, and I told you they were down hard, really hard, because last week it was mostly hot and dry in the Midwest and in your Corn Belt. And now we're looking down the line. It's going to continue warm with warm nights, which promotes growth, and there's been plenty of moisture out there. But they're also looking at scattered storms on the back end of your 7-day forecast. So if we continue to see this warm weather, warm nights, sunshine, and then a little bit more moisture, I mean, we're working our way into making this crop here, guys. But corn down 23.75 cents a bushel. During regular trading on Tuesday, ending at 7.60 3/4. Beans down 21 cents at 16.81. Kansas City hard red winter wheat, take a look at this, down 63.75 cents. Ouch! At 10.41 1/4. It was just 12.5 a bushel here just the other day, but unbelievable how volatile that grain market is. Fat cattle trade was very, very minimal, especially in the northern plains, because those guys know how short these packers are. I don't care if they showed the show list to be big. You can put the whole damn feed yard on the show list if you want to, but the packers aren't going to be interested in them. But they will be interested on the few finished high grading cattle that are out there. And your northern feedlots are not going to price them right now. They're sure not going to be interested at steady or lower money. But we didn't see any trade in Colorado, Iowa, Nebraska, or Kansas. Just about 150 head confirmed on Tuesday at 138.50 in Texas. Box beef cutout values were some higher, but not a lot. Choice cuts up $1.06 at 267.56. Selects up 31 cents at 246.70. Slaughter running at another aggressive pace right here. Just through the first 2 days of the week, 250,000 head harvested. That's 8,000 more than last week, 11,000 more than the same week a year ago. And we've seen our choice and plus, choice and prime grading really plummet here as we're getting into the calves. They're digging into them. The show lists are green. And they're buying cattle that aren't really finished the way they've been wanting them ever since the pandemic there. Because they've been buying cattle that have been obese, overweight, but they've loved the grading on them. But Choice Plus grading in your main areas, last reported, was just 80%, which is not nearly as good as has been running for quite a while. Talk about what else is going on. Ever.ag, their ag insurance services there, they've got agents across the country, licensed agents in 44 different states, and that includes your LRP. If you guys are interested in doing something for that, especially you backgrounders, but also you cattle feeders that that don't really like taking a position on the board, leaving yourself open for margin calls and things like that. But also for your cow-calf producers that are looking at what your calf prices are going to be, and you've got high inputs and you don't really like the risk, you can look at those LRPs. But Ever.ag can do those things for you, and they're well versed in it. Like I said, they've got people all over the country. Navigate your risk management with Ever.ag. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index late in the day on Tuesday sitting at 165.11, up another 88 cents. It took a big jump on Monday because we saw that seventh day the week prior to last week drop off. So now we're on those the big prices that we've seen the last week and a little bit more that we've been on the rally. Let's talk about your big sales on Tuesday. Ozarks Regional Stockyard, West Plains, Missouri, had 2,600 head. Pretty good movement there in the heat and humidity in south central Missouri. They had another 711 head on their in-house video that they do with help from DV Auction. Steve Anderson does such a great job there getting those cattle consigned in there. They offer them at the same time every week, and just always having a real active in-house video there at Ozarks Regional Stockyard. But the sale barn brick and mortar sale through the ring, feeders sold $5 to $10 higher. They did not gain the big gains that a lot of them saw last week, but they had a good run this week. Feeders $5 to $10 higher, calves $3 to $7 higher. Check out this huge string of big yearlings there. 595 head of mixed yearling steers there, all through the ring in one whack. Weighed 854 pounds at 166.10 in extreme south central Missouri, guys. That's a hell of a quote. How about Beaver County Stockyards? I told you that Beaver, Oklahoma was going to have a good run of yearling steers. They did have another good run of yearling steers. Look at these 8 loads of yearling steers. They ranged in weight from 785 all the way up to 1075, and they sold from 148.5 to 174. And of course, the 148.5 was on the biggest steers weighing 1073. That 174 on your lighter ones that weighed 784. But hell of a quote there in no man's land, Oklahoma. How about some other individual quotes around the circuit? How about Denny Rezac Livestock Commission in St. Mary's, Kansas? 56 steers weighed 883 at $175. Big time quote. You think you want to go to the southeast to find some cheaper calves? They don't sell them all one at a time down there. How about Cattleman's Livestock Auction in Harrison, Arkansas? You don't think about them having those huge strings, but all in one bunch, 92 head, 548-pound steers in Harrison, Arkansas, bring $202.75. Put about $10 freight under those guys. But your best quote that I saw anywhere on Tuesday, your National Beef Wire top quote for the day, come out of Huron Continental Marketing in Huron, South Dakota. 66 head, 918-pound steers bring 174.25. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.